Hello, this is Dr. Bill Rawls. What's the best test to test for Lyme disease? There are lots of different kinds of testing, and a lot of new companies are coming on the scene because it's very, very lucrative. The biggest thing that separates someone with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue from Lyme disease is having that positive test, because basically all the symptoms are the same. And what I'm finding is, well, maybe there's not a lot of difference, and maybe there are microbes involved with all of those things. But with Lyme disease, we're looking for a test that tests for the microbe called Borrelia. There are many species of Borrelia, which makes things very confusing. Some tests are just testing for Borrelia burgdorferi, the most commonly known species that's associated with Lyme, and some of them are testing for multiple. There are really two basic types of testing. You can test the body's reaction to the microbe, the antibodies that are being produced. So you measure the antibodies in the body to find out whether the antibodies are being created against that particular microbe, both acutely and chronically, or you can actually test for particles of the DNA of the microbe. So there are different ways to test that. There are other ways besides that, but those are the two big ones: DNA testing, that we call PCR, and also serology, antibody testing. And a lot of times people end up doing both. All of the tests are designed to pick up acute Lyme disease. I think that's really important. So when someone is bitten by a tick and that microbe is traversing through the bloodstream, then that's the best time to pick it up. Once it's become disseminated into tissues deeply and it's not in the bloodstream any longer, then it becomes harder to pick up. So that's one of the really tough things about testing for Lyme disease is a lot of people don't have an acute reaction after the tick bite, and they don't get sick until later when their immune system starts to deteriorate, and by then the microbes are buried deeply in tissue. So whether you're going to find it depends on whether the concentration of the microbe in tissues is high enough to give a reaction, and whether the immune system is reacting to it. Acutely, you could get a pickup rate of 95%, a 95% chance that if the microbe is there, you're going to pick it up. Chronically, we really don't know. It's very difficult to evaluate that question. We don't know whether it's a 30% pickup rate or an 80% pickup rate in a lot of cases. Right now, the standard is a test called Western Blot, which is testing for specific antibodies to the microbe. So you're looking at what are called bands of different particles, different antibodies that react to different particles of the microbe. So you have to have so many bands depending on whether it's an acute or chronic infection to define it as a positive test. The problem with the standard Western blot is that back about 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, they were creating a vaccine, and so they wanted to make sure that the vaccine was separate from the actual Western blot, so they took out several of the key bands. So our present Western blot that most people are using is missing some of the key parts that would help us to identify the microbe. Now, other companies, one company called Genex has added the bands back in and has made the test more sensitive for chronic infection. So the test is better. But what we do with that is we also increase the rate of false positives, a positive test for someone who doesn't actually have the microbe. And that's a real problem because testing is very, very lucrative. If you've got all the symptoms of chronic Lyme disease and a negative test, it's very frustrating because when you go to your doctor isn't really willing to listen to you. So there's a huge incentive for labs to provide a positive test. So if you spend $600, $1,000 for a test, you really want it to be positive if you've got all those symptoms. So many of the labs are really hedging the bet toward people getting a positive test, so that there's a higher rate of positive testing of false positives with some of the newer labs that are coming out. Bottom line is, I think you have to take all of it with a grain of salt. If you have all the symptoms of Lyme disease and any history of a tick bite, then you're probably carrying some form of tick-borne microbes. There are many microbes other than Borrelia that can cause the same symptom profile. So it doesn't have to be classic Borrelia infection to have basically the Lyme disease syndrome. So testing can be valuable. I think it's important for us to continue to refine our ability to test. Testing will become more and more important in the future, especially as we are able to test someone's entire microbiome, all of the microbes in their body. We're not there yet. That may be some years off, but ultimately that's going to be more valuable than anything else. So in the meantime, testing can help you make decisions, but don't put all your faith in the testing. It's really important to recognize that if you have all the symptoms of Lyme disease, there's probably a microbial foundation of your illness, but addressing that illness is going to be very different than treating an acute infection with something like a pneumonia or something like that. So to find out more about these kinds of topics and a deeper information about testing, please come to my website, rawlsmd.com. I've also written a whole chapter in my book, Unlocking Lyme, about testing that goes into great detail about the availability, the testing that is available right now. And we also circulate a newsletter if you'd like to sign up for that we periodically put information about new companies that come along that might have something promising to help out with that information. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you found it helpful. Be sure and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And while you're at it, please take the time to leave me a comment. I would really like to know of any questions that you might want answered in future videos. Thanks for watching.